Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to the IMI Health Hour. Education is a lifetime process. I have been a student all my life and a teacher for more than 35-40 years. But you never stop learning. A few years ago, I was invited to give a talk in the University of Kufa on the theories and principles of learning. There were several other professors who gave talks. One of them was a very senior person from University of Damascus, Professor Faid Sandouk. Professor Sarwar Hussain from Harvard was there, Professor Said Qureshi, and Said Bukhari from USA, and many others. And there were deans and vice chancellors. After the discussion, they all came to realize that it's a process which needs further elaboration. So we discussed and we elaborated and we came up with certain conclusions. What I'd like to present here is the discussion that we had on the theories and principles of learning. And this is a presentation that I'd like to show in terms of slides. So I'm going to talk about theories of learning, concentrating on very significant major components of the theories called pedagogy and andragogy. Now, people have defined education in different ways, and the definition has changed over time. This was defined as a process that brings about a tangible change in a person. Tangible means visible, palpable, noticeable change in a person. It is also defined as a process of transmitting what is known. However, what has happened is that over time people have realized that education is a continuous process and is now defined as a process of lifelong learning, acquiring matching skills and an urge for self-directed inquiry. There are 3 or 4 aspects to it, and we'll discuss it as we prolong and as we go on the discussion. It's a lifelong learning process, so you're a student forever, and knowledge must match skills. And there should be a desire for self-directed inquiry. So obviously it means that we have to look at various aspects. Teaching, should it be guided by the teacher, or should it be student-centered? And that has been a debate which has been going on in the education circle for a length of time. I'd like to talk about pedagogy first. Pedagogy is a term which is derived from Greek word ped, meaning child, and of course agogos means learning or leading. Pedagogy therefore means the art and science of teaching children. This has been a traditional way of teaching forever. For a long time it has been the modus operandi in schools, colleges, universities, where a student is treated like a child and the teacher decides as to what's to be taught and how is to be taught. The curriculum, the teaching strategies, assessment, evaluation, everything is defined and directed by the teacher. That is called pedagogy. Andragogy is a relatively new entry in the field of education. It is defined as adult education. Now, there are 2 forms of education. I have discussed in this particular aspect in my previous talks as well, but I'd like to reiterate that there is informal education, which starts at birth and continues throughout life, and formal education, which starts at schooling and ends with the university, and perhaps towards the end, after completion of university degrees, you go into practical life and you combine your degrees with matching skills or diplomas or learning experiences and what have you. So informal education is a process that starts from the moment you're born. The first azan is recited in your ears till the last time when you're buried, and talqeen is recited according to our faith. So it is a continuous process. For formal education ends with schooling, universities, etc. Now, there are certain underlying principles which are very fundamental, and they are basically fundamentally based on psychological aspects: instinctive, instructional, observational, and practical. These are the underlying principles which the educationists or educators have taught us. There are certain instinctive elements in education, the instructional elements in education, the observational elements in education, and the practical elements in education. I'll try to cover some of these topics. Now, there are 4 basic instincts that everybody is born with, irrespective of whether you're a human being or an animal or whatever. Everybody is born with these fundamental instincts: hunger, security, curiosity, and companionship. And they are very simple examples. The moment a child is born, whether it's an animal child or a human child, the first thing is hunger. So the child looks for a source of nourishment, and that continues throughout life. And hunger doesn't have to be confined to eating and drinking. Hunger could be for power, for academic excellence, for growth in life, for whatever reason. Hunger is a continuous process that was instinctive in character. One is born with it. It continues throughout one's life, never ends. Satisfaction is a very gratifying attribute that you develop after a certain length of time, and of course contentment is the ultimate objective that one tries to gain. But hunger is the instinctive character that every human being, every animal, every living creature is born with. Then there is security. The moment a child is born, straight away there is this feeling of security. That is why a baby wants to go back, hide into the lap of the mother, whether it's an animal or a human being. Everybody looks for, and the security is a continuous process. You look for security in your life. You want to build a house, have a roof on your head. You want to have a source of income which is continuous and ongoing, and you want to have security in terms of life, in terms of your professional qualifications, your skills, and what have you. So security is a continuous process. After hunger, the second most important element is security. Everybody wants to feel secure. Security, if one is deprived of, leads to a lot of complications and uncertainties. Then there is a question of curiosity. The moment a baby is born, whatever, whether it's a living creature, some insects or animals or human beings, the first thing is they start looking around and trying to find out what is in their neighborhood. And that is why if you put a burning flame or like an amber in front of a child, he tries to reach out to see it. Curiosity. Curiosity is the most important element in human life, also in animal life, every living creature. You want to learn through a process of curiosity. Curiosity is what took out the man from the cave to the outer world and then continues to go through the process, and now space and after space and whatever is happening in the world. Curiosity is one of the instincts that everybody is born with. And companionship. Whether it's an animal or mankind, companionship is the most important thing. Without company, there is solitude, and solitude leads to depression. Loneliness leads to depression and suicidal tendencies, lots of the complications that can arise. Companionship is one of the attributes of whether it's like animal life or human life. Human beings, of course, one is recognized by the company that one keeps. So these fundamental instincts one has to keep in mind in terms of education. There's hunger for life, hunger for learning, hunger for quenching thirst, hunger for succeeding in life, and whatever. Security, you want to be secure in your life. You want to have curiosity is one of the essential things we lead to research, and that's how you progress in life and learn different skills, and you continue to learn different elements in your life to climb up the stair in terms of the scale of life. And companionship is what gives you a certain gravitas. If you have good company, you learn a lot of good things. If you have bad company, obviously you end up as a bad person. Now, I look at certain aspects that I talked about earlier, the fundamental principles of learning, or theories of learning. Instructional begins at mother's knee and continues throughout life. The moment a baby is born, the mother starts to instruct, do this. I mean, this continuous, everybody knows about this. I don't have to elaborate it. Instruction is a continuous process. It starts at mother's knee and continues throughout life. First is the parents do it, then the elders do it, then the school teachers do it, then your seniors do it, and continuous process through which instruction is given to a person, and that process is a continuous process, a part of continued educational activity. This has been a tradition in all professions. See one, do one, teach one. It's been going on for a long time, particularly in the medical profession. I'll concentrate, because I'm a medical educator, so I'll concentrate here, but also in engineering, in science, in technology, in whatever. The modus operandi has been that see one, do that, apply it practically, and then start teaching to other people. The objective is that you learn, you absorb, assimilate, and then disseminate that knowledge with the view to benefit the mankind, to benefit your colleagues, your community, society. Now this process has been there for a long time, but now it is obsolete. Now they say that just learning and seeing one thing and doing it once and then teaching it is not enough. You have to go through a certain learning process, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Observation is the other principle: to observe, explore, absorb, and retain. Like I said, one of the instinctive characters of life, humanity, animal, whatever, is curiosity. One has to be curious to learn. You have to be curious to acquire knowledge. If you're not curious, you do not learn, then you go into a state of dissolution and isolation and loneliness. You have to observe, and once you observe, you explore that possibility. You go out to a forest, you look at a tree or a plant or an animal, you want to explore and you want to learn about it. Then you absorb that information, and that absorption of information is one of the essential components of learning process. You retain that information in the brain, and that retention will then lead to memory and recall. That will come later, I'll talk about in a moment. There is a process of natural osmosis, that you observe certain thing and learn it. For example, in medical profession, apothecaries, for long time association of apprenticeship, like in teaching profession as well, you learn your teacher, you learn your master, you learn your educator, you learn from your seniors and absorb that technique, the methodology, then instinctively it goes into your system. It's a process of osmosis. Percolation starts the moment you observe and start percolating it. The brain accepts it, records it, and that is to be a continuous process. Whenever it's needed, it will be recalled. Now, this is one of the essential components of education throughout life. Whatever the profession, you have to be a keen observer. You learn from your masters, from your seniors, from your elder, even your peers. You learn something from your friends, from your mistakes. You learn that process, learn that technique, learn that methodology, learn that art, learn that piece of knowledge, absorb it, assimilate it, retain it through a process of osmosis, and that is stored in memory for future reference and future utility and use. Now, the core adult learning principles are which are slightly different to pediatric, because pediatrics, the teacher or the father or the parents or the elders will decide as to what is best for the child. And this is what happens in every family, every culture, that parents know more, so they decide for the child what could be the best thing that the child could learn. Obviously, things have changed over time. There was a time, like for example in Eastern culture, also in the West, that the moment a child is born, the parents will start saying, well, he's going to be a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer or an accountant. Now things have changed. Many more professions have come up. So that process used to be a continuous process of hammering down the child's mind that eventually he'll become a doctor or a surgeon or a physician or a technician or what have you. Now that was the principle in pedagogy or pediatric learning process, which has been there for a long time, from times immemorial. Core adult learning principles are slightly different. Adults need to know why does he have to learn that, what he has to learn, and how is it to be taught or how is it to be learned. So the question that is the fundamental difference between pedagogy and andragogy is that core adult principle starts when the student starts asking a question. Why? Why do I need to learn this? Why do I want to do this practical experiment, for example, or learn this skill? What could be the motive, what could be the advantage, and how do I do it? So that's one thing. The important thing about this is that adult learning process is autonomous and self-learning, whereas in pedagogy it was the father or the family or the teacher who decided. In core adult learning principle, the most important thing is autonomy. That because it's an adult, he decides himself what is good for him. So there is a difference between pedagogy and andragogy here, and I'll concentrate towards the end of my talk at what are the different attributes. But in core adult learning process, autonomy and self-directing as to I decide as to what I want to learn and why do I want to learn it. What are my objectives? I want to concentrate on certain elements in my life, and that is what is an important aspect of core adult learning principle. The third principle is the resourceful full of life experience and mental model. So an adult gains knowledge from personal experience, from peers' experience, from colleagues' experience, from society's experience, community, and absorbs it and makes mental model for future interaction, future reference, future application in pedagogy, in children's education, or basically pedagogical strategy. That does not apply, because the teacher is determining the factors, and he says, look, this is best for you, and this is how it's, and there I think there's a question of bias that comes in, because teacher is in good faith trying to do, or the parent is trying to do the best possible for the child, but it may not be quite as effective as adult learning principle, where the lifetime experiences and the models which are available would be helpful in guiding as to the future benefits that one can gain from knowledge and skills. Also important thing is that ready to learn when needed or considered relevant. That's important, because in pedagogy what is happening is the teacher or the parents decide, or whoever is the educator who decides as to what is best for the student to gain success in life. In adult learning process, you learn when you're ready to learn, when you want to learn, and you want to feel the relevance to your learning process. So if you want to learn something which is relevant to you, you obviously have more interest as compared to pedagogy, where it was decided for you because the teachers thought so, or the family thought so. The other aspect of the other principle of core adult learning is the practical. It is practical and like to apply information in context and to solve problems. So it's not theoretical. You want to learn with a view to solve the problem. So problem solving comes in adult more than the pedagogy. In pedagogy, a certain aspect you learn, and it's based on memory and recall, the process of see one, do one, teach one, osmosis, percolation, collection of information, retention of the information, and then memory and recall, rote memorization leading to memory and recall. Whereas in core adult learning process, that you want to use that information which you're gaining and want to apply it with a view to solve a problem. That is the main objective, because you want to gain knowledge to solve a problem, to achieve certain objectives in life. And that is one of the fundamental differences and one of the fundamental principles of adult education, adult core learning. Learn with the context to solve a problem. And the other important thing is motivated by the intrinsic value of learning and personal payoffs. That means that you want to learn something with the objective that will it benefit me, or is just a question. So I think this is a very debatable thing, because knowledge in olden days used to be for personal glory, or other personal personal satisfaction rather than glory. Satisfaction is the right word, that you learned certain things because you felt happy and gave you joy, etc. Then came a time when knowledge became only for learning with a view to gain your earning, to earn your living, to do something which will feed you and your family. Times have changed. Learning has become more dedicated towards basically solving the problems, to learn, to gain access to better quality of life, to health and whatever factors. So knowledge, the fundamental principle or the modus operandi has changed over time. Knowledge basically was to improve the quality of your mind, your thinking, your values and things. Then came a time when knowledge became only something that you would gain with a view to earn your living. Times are changing. I think now what is happening is that as you grow older, and particularly those who have achieved certain success in life, they want to gain knowledge and continue to read throughout their lives with a view to improve their intellect, their intelligence, to better understanding of life. So there are different phases of educational process goes on through life, but the intrinsic value of learning has to be kept in mind as far as the adult core learning is. So obviously the difference is that in pedagogy the child is told that this is what you have to learn to gain access, because you'll be a better person, you'll be a better human being, you'll learn better quality of life, etc., etc. Whereas the adult learning is that intrinsic value of learning has to be kept in mind, and the adult keeps that in his view with the the final objective, that will it pay off? Will it pay off in terms of financial rewards, in terms of success in life, in terms of quality of life, and other issues. Now we'll talk about different aspects of orientations. How does orientation to learning work? There is the first and foremost thing is behavioral learning, orientation because of behavioral process. This is a learning that leads to change in the behavior based on external stimuli such as competency-based tools, skill labs and training. So what it means is that you go to a lab, you learn certain experiment, apply that experiment in life, you go out to the market, for example, you look at different objects, you learn it. You've got memory and recall and learning with a view that the behavior will then lead to better quality of understanding of that particular thing. So when you go out again, you know better about the good and the evil aspects of it. And that is based on certain stimuli which are external in character, and they are based on competency-based tools, particularly when it applies to medical profession. For example, you want to learn the art of healing by applying certain skills. For example, how to give an injection properly, how to give medication properly, how to take the blood pressure properly, and those skills are competency-based skills which will help in learning and becoming a better physician in other professional life, engineer or accounts. They have to learn these things according to various matching skills. So that's called behavior orientation. Then there is cognitive orientation, that learning is an internal mental process requiring synthesis of thought to develop capacity and skills to learn and to cultivate intelligence, memory, recall, cognitive development and learning how to learn. So what it basically means is that it's a process, cognitive process of learning by observation, by experimentation, by interaction, by osmosis, and then also by developing your capacity and skills to apply that knowledge to solve a problem. The intention is that you cultivate your intelligence based upon memory and recall, rote memorization, applied practices, applied experiments, skill labs, competence space, etc., and then cognitive development, which continues to go on throughout your life. And that is the thing, the more you activate your brain by different skills, different learning, different maybe conundrums, solving problems, etc., the brain remains active, and this process should continue throughout one's life. Then there is humanistic orientation, which is affective and cognitive, and these needs are to be applied to achieve autonomous and self. This is particularly important in adult learning, that you want to have cognitive domains, you also have affective. Affective means applied, that means you have theoretical aspect, but it must be combined with practical aspects, with a view to be autonomous in life and to have self-directed learning process to continue to learn throughout your life. The objective is that one has to be a lifelong learner to be a good person, and that good person, I'm not talking in terms of moral references, I'm talking about in general attitude in life, to be knowledgeable, to be somebody who's respected because of knowledge, not because of wealth, because of knowledge, because of ilm. Then there is the important aspect which is called self-learning orientation, which means you learn from different aspects: socialization, social roles, mentoring, interaction, observation. These are standard models which are available in any culture, any society. You learn from observing other seniors, your colleagues, your elders, talking to people who are more seasoned in life, more wiser than you, and the more you learn, you make your social roles and models, and you have role models in life from whom you learn with a view to become a better person, and you have interaction with these people. Observe, interact, learn from persons who are more knowledgeable. And socialization is an important aspect because man is basically a social animal. Now, Noah is a famous philosopher, educator who came up not so recently, but a few decades ago, and he came up with the concept of principles of andragogy, which are based on these principles, and I'll talk about that briefly. Self-concept, experience, readiness to learn, orientation to learning, motivation and relevance. These are the elements which form the fundamental principles of adult learning. Knowles is famous for it, and he is the one who actually defines the parameters of andragogy in modern theories and principles of education. Let's start with self-concept. The self-concept means that every adult student has a pre-concept of the subject through human contact. It is refined and honed with formal education through lectures, audiovisual aids and discussions, etc. I'll go slightly higher, at a higher level, and talk about more on the basis of philosophy, that when we talk about priori knowledge, we talk about certain knowledge that everybody is endowed with. This is a Platonic conversation actually. Plato has discussed it at length in his writings, that everybody has a priori knowledge. Even though you have not seen blue color, or you have not smelled rose, but there is some knowledge, which is innate knowledge, which is there in the form of essence in your system, and that knowledge you are ordained with. That knowledge becomes a guiding force for future interaction. Then there is posterior knowledge, which means that your inner knowledge, or the knowledge that you're born with, which is present inside every human being, is then refined by interaction, by posterior knowledge, knowledge that comes later with the human contact, with the contact with human beings. It is refined and honed with formal education through schooling and interaction with people, with teachers, your elders, and then of course the process of educational strategies like lectures, audiovisual aids, and so there is a priori knowledge and there is a posterior knowledge. Self-concept is based on priori knowledge that everybody is born with, and you then develop it and cultivate it by interaction with various people. Experience is an important subject. Each day brings a new experience to a student, adult or child. Everybody is born with something which is there, but you learn each day. Each day brings you new, exposes you to a new learning process. And the first day in a white coat, for example, a doctor visiting health service, visiting a factory floor, an apprentice, assisting at the reception, doing an articleship, etc., is the experience which is added on to the priori knowledge. So you had the priori knowledge, you had the self-concept, now you learn experience by going to a certain floor or workshop or to theatre or to a marketplace, whatever one is doing depending on the profession. That experience adds on to the self-concept, adds on to the priori knowledge. And that is a continuous process that goes on forever. Work experience, that is why essential, and in the West it is absolutely vital that the moment you finish your schooling you go for work experience. I'm glad to say it's also in the Eastern culture it's catching up, that after high school or before graduation a young person is sent for work experience, which is vital, because combined with self-concept and knowledge that you've gained, you have to refine it with work experience, and that work experience adds and goes on adding as you go on in life and learn more and more throughout your experience. Then there is this concept of readiness to learn. For example, I'll take an example of a medical student, admission into a medical school, an articleship in accountancy, for example, an experience as a bank clerk, maybe best news a young person may receive. So from the first day that he goes to put on a white coat as to become a doctor, or goes to the lab, or to a bank to learn the fundamentals of the etiquette of banking, that by itself is such an important step in terms of experience to the priori knowledge, to the self-concept, to the learning experience, that the experience is now making a person ready to learn more. So the mind is getting ready by each movement, and each day that passes through the learning process cultivates and develops further. So the mind has to be like a sponge, and everybody's mind is like a sponge. You absorb all the information from observation, from perception, for contact, for all the tactile senses, all the five senses. You make a mental note of it and store that information, not but just for memory and recall, but problem solving. The whole philosophy of core adult learning process is problem solving, that you want to learn not to just impress somebody with your knowledge, but to be a problem solver. That is the whole thing that has to be kept in mind. Then there is the concept of orientation to learning. Orientation to learn is a second habit for a young medic. it applies to other professions as well, to accounting or banking or whatever. It's an instinctive attribute that medical students develop as they progress in their search for knowledge. They become problem-centered than subject-centered. So the objective of core adult knowledge, according to Knowles, is that you want to learn with the objective that you want to solve the problem. You have to be a problem solver, not subject-centered. And this has been a debate that's been going on in medical profession at least for the last 30 years, that thematic teaching is that better, system-based teaching is better, or problem-solving methods better. And I think a lot of discussion I've talked about these various subjects in different debates. I've not gone here, but Knowles believes that the objective of learning should be problem solving. It is not that you master a subject like a geography or anatomy or physiology or what have you, but what is the ultimate objective? The ultimate objective is to apply that knowledge combined with experience to solve a problem. An adult mind gathers information, acquires knowledge, develops matching skills and ethical attitude through observation, interaction, dialogue, synthesis, and each word is relevant here. So when a medic or a young doctor goes to, or a young student goes to medical college or medical school, he learns certain things, applies that knowledge in practical lab or skill labs, whatever, learns from the teachers, from observation through a process of osmosis, and that is refined through a process of synthesis, analysis, application of the knowledge. Knowledge without application is meaningless. So you want to train your mind, you absorb whatever you get through different sources which are available with a view to interact, dialogue, carry on with your colleagues, with peers, discussion. That is why small group discussion is so fundamentally radical in approach, that you have interaction, you have synthesis, analysis, and you come to the final conclusion and you solve a problem. An important aspect in adult learning is motivation to learn. Each student has a built-in trait of learning and applying knowledge. Lifelong scholarship is the spinal cord of contemporary medical education, and this applies to all other forms of education as well, because it has to be generalized. Education is a universal phenomenon. You cannot confine it only to one compartment and medical education. I would go to say that in any profession, every student has a desire to learn and to be active lifetime learner, and that lifelong scholarship is the fundamental thing that makes or breaks a human being. If you have a desire to learn, whether by reading books or internet, and now you have so much knowledge, plethora of information is available. Even by just walking around, looking at things, you can learn so much. And listening to various things, different audiobooks are available, so much to learn, so many resources available which you can use. The other thing is that self-esteem, curiosity, desire to learn and excel, desire to achieve, and self-accomplishment. These are the attributes. You want to learn for certain reasons. You want to learn for self-esteem. You want to be a better human being, a more knowledgeable person. Curiosity, which I said in the beginning, is one of the fundamental instincts of human being. Also of animals, of course, but I'm referring to human beings. Curiosity to be a better person, to be a better human being, to be able to serve mankind better. Desire to learn and excel in life, desire to achieve more in life, not just in terms of glory, not in terms of wealth, but in terms of becoming a better human being to serve mankind. And the sense of self-accomplishment. That means that, if you feel that you have learned that bit of knowledge and you applied that knowledge to the betterment of society, you feel happy, the contentment, which I've discussed in the past in the discussions about Platonic theories, that eudaimonia is a state of happiness. It is not happiness, not joy, it's contentment of life. It's minan al-qalb, contentment of life. That should be the objective of every student in life. Motivation to learn and treat the sick humanity is the fundamental brick on which the foundation of medical education. This is the fundamental thing for medical education, but also for education. Whatever the profession, the objective is that you want to learn with the objective to serve the mankind, to be a better human being, to serve mankind. So in medical profession, the serving the humanity is the objective, and you want to learn that. The motivation has to be there to learn, to apply that knowledge to serve mankind by treating the sick. sick. The modern methods of medical education are so intense, so engaging, that motivation to learn becomes almost indispensable. Even at high school level, I see it, my grandchildren, for example, they go to high school or even the secondary school, they have no time. There is so intense educational process that goes on that they have no time. At the weekend, they're so exhausted, they just want to relax, because the process of education is very intense. It has changed over time. Times have gone where you used to be confined to only syllabus. You completed the syllabus, you completed the task, and that was done. Now you have to excel. You have to excel, and therefore you continue to learn. Maximum time that you can give to the process of education is what will give you the rich rewards in your life towards the in practical life. What is also important is the relevance. As the mind matures, it explores many avenues for the reason to acquire knowledge, and look for appropriate and relevant avenues to apply the knowledge that's acquired. This is a principle of adult learning. In pedagogy, as I said before, and I'll repeat it later on when we come to comparisons, the objectives are determined by the teacher or the family. In adult learning, the relevance, you want to learn for certain reasons. You want to be a better human being, a better physician, a better surgeon, better teacher or philosopher or whatever. The objective has to be clear in your mind. The relevance of learning is an important aspect. You want to learn not just for the sake of learning, you want to have certain objectives in life, and that is an important aspect of adult or andragogal education. Acquiring, applying and disseminating knowledge is the triangle of knowledge, and these three things: acquire knowledge from whatever source, whatever information you can gather, apply it to improve. That's what I said, theory with practice. You must have matching skills. Knowledge with skills is mandatory. Imam Ali said knowledge and skills much better. He said something like this, that knowledge without skills is like a bow without an arrow, which means that knowledge and skills must match each other. And then you apply this knowledge with the intention of disseminating. You acquire that knowledge, apply it through practical experience, and disseminate to benefit mankind. This is the triangle of education, or triangle of knowledge, that finds the relevance in most, if not all, circumstances. That you acquire knowledge, apply it and disseminate it for the welfare of mankind. Intelligence is again a debatable terminology. People are defined in phrase. I'll just use the simple thing. Intelligence is defined as an attribute of accommodating in good as well as adverse circumstances. Knowledge refines that attribute. So intelligence to be able to cope with changing circumstances. You may have good times, you may have bad times. If you can cope with those times, you're an intelligent person. Wisdom is secondary. Wisdom comes later. Wisdom is, you may be born a wise person, but most of the people are born intelligent. Wisdom comes with practical experiences. So cobweb of intelligence is then combined, or let's say that intelligence is there, but you then web. You develop certain elements in practical life, certain layers, to say, of wisdom from practical experiences, and you become wise person after a certain process of learning that goes through a certain life scales or time changes or whatever you learn in due course of time. So knowledge and skills combined together, combined with wisdom, is the ultimate objective. But intelligence is one of the elements, attributes of intelligence, to be able to accommodate yourself in good as well as bad circumstances. Now I'll do the comparison of attributes of pedagogy and andragogy, which is what I just discussed, and try to compare these various elements. Pedagogy, as I said, is pediatric or child related or child education. Andragogy is adult education, and these are the concepts. The concept of learning in pedagogy is that it's teacher-centered. Teacher decides as to what is best for the student. It is teacher-centered, teacher-determined, selected by the teacher, and the teacher decides the curriculum, the syllabus, the teaching strategies, and the way he teaches. Evaluation is also unidirectional. The teacher decides how to evaluate assessment, and evaluation is based on it's unidirectional, the teacher does. In andragogy, it gradually matures from dependence to self-directed, self-motivated, purposeful and multi-directional. And I have discussed in the last few slides, the andragogy, certain objectives have to be kept on. You want to learn. Why do you want to learn it? What you want to learn it? How do you want to learn it? What are the objectives? Will it benefit you in your career? Will it benefit your general attitude in life? So certain objectives are determined by yourself. So it is mostly, the difference is pedagogy is teacher-centered, whereas andragogy is student-centered. Student determines what he wants to learn and how he wants to learn. So then there's aspect of a readiness to learn. Pedagogy, students are directed to learn as advised by the teacher or the curriculum committee or the higher authorities. There is the fear of failure, the family pressure, the peer pressure, standardized curriculum with a uniform step-by-step progression for all learners. So it's a process where everything is predetermined by the authorities. That is pedagogy. Andragogy, experience makes them ready to learn when they need to learn. And to face a real lifetime issues. So they're more practical. They want to learn when they're ready to learn, and they want to apply that knowledge for their personal benefit or the benefit of their society or the family or community, etc. The educator is responsible for creating conditions, curriculum and appropriate tools. So that's the fundamental difference. Then there is a question of orientation of learning. Pedagogy is subject-oriented for later use. Curriculum follows the logical progression subject-wise as well as from simple to complex subjects, from arithmetic to calculus or what have you. Andragogy is learning to excel, achieving higher goals, applying theory into practical life, and the curriculum should therefore be contemporary, competency-based, performance-centered, targeted towards more effectiveness. I think I'm going to stop here because this is a further expansion of thing, and I have to have a second lecture on this as a part of continuum of this activity, because each item in this needs explanation. Suffice it to say that what I've tried to do in this particular lecture is that I've tried to cover the theories and principles of pediatric or pedagogical learning as well as the andragogical learning. I would continue this discussion in the second lecture, which will be probably next week or the week after, because this is a complex story of learning process. Knowledge has to be acquired with certain objectives. To conclude, I would say that pedagogy is student-centered, is unidirectional, it is decided by the teacher or the authority, and that is becoming somewhat obsolete, at least in medical profession. Andragogy is somewhat relatively new concept. It was introduced by Knowles, who said that the certain principles have to be kept in view, and adults want to learn with certain objectives. Why do they want to learn it? How do they want to learn it? What do they want to learn it? And the objective is that you assimilate knowledge, synthesizes, analyze it, and applies it for problem solving. Viewers, I'll stop here and I'll continue with the second part of this lecture in my next session, probably in due course of time. Thank you for listening to me, and thank you for watching this video. Bye-bye.